Subramaniam Chidambaram for the Industry Connect Talk series. We have Mr. Subramaniam Chidambaram, who is currently leading the strategy for Cummins Group in India. Welcome, sir. Previously, he held the role of strategy and digitalization for the distribution system business of Siemens India. In his 6+ years experience at McKinsey and Siemens, he has significant experience in spearheading transformation programs and developing business and corporate strategies for players across sectors and across functions, primarily in strategy, operations, sales, and marketing. Before McKinsey, during his tenure at Siemens, Subramaniam had been instrumental in implementing the order tracking system tool for sales order management for one of their factories in Mumbai. He was also part of the lean manufacturing transformation project, first of its kind in Siemens factories outside Germany. Mr. Subramaniam has several national and international papers and articles in operations and strategy to his credit. He has been pursuing the study of Sanskrit language since 2012 and has a flair for Carnatic music. He completed his master's in Sanskrit and is currently pursuing his PhD in Indic Perspectives on Leadership from Chinmay Vishwavidyapith. The Executive PGDM family of 2022 is delighted and looking forward to hosting Mr. Subramaniam.
Thanks a lot, Tanya. And I'm really happy to be amongst all of you today to share some of my experiences, and more than happy to take questions and have a good interaction. That is what I'm looking forward to today. I know that most of these discussions without a slide, it becomes a bit of a handicap. The presenter and the people who are listening, it doesn't get anchored enough. So probably I'll start with a few slides, but I don't want to keep you glued onto the slides for too long. So maybe the first 10-15 minutes or something, I'll share something that I have, and I'll be more than happy to then take on interactions or questions from all of you, and then we can have a good discussion post that. I hope that's okay with all of you.
Yes, sir, that would be fine.
I'll share my screen. Just let me know once you are able to see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So before I start again, wishing you all a very happy new year, and I hope everyone at home is safe and all of you are safe. So the interaction that I'm going to be having with you today, where I'm going to be sharing a bit of my experience and insights from whatever I have been through in my career in terms of consulting as well as industry. So I felt the key points that I could discuss with you, especially since you are people who have had a good industry experience, and once you move from your B school education back to the industry, again, you're going to be amidst all of that. So I thought I could share some of those insights with you and then take on discussions from there. So let me start with what I foresee some of the major trends that are driving the industry today. Now here, when I say industry, I'm not being very specific in terms of is it manufacturing or is it IT or is it, those kind of thing. In general, what do we see some of the trends that are driving the industry? Here again, I'm going to be handpicking some of these trends, which I believe are some of the bigger trends. Not to say that this is not an exhaustive list, but just some of the key things that I think we should be mindful of. The first big thing that we are seeing, and you would be reading a lot, right, is in terms of climate change. Now, until a few years back, probably this was more of a nice to have topic, which you can keep discussing at tea time, or you can just keep discussing outside of business. Let's discuss about climate change and what's happening. But sooner, this is getting hugely integrated with the business. You would all know about the different countries which have signed up to the carbon reduction targets on when they would go, when they would become zero carbon, net zero emissions. So all different kinds of targets that different countries are committing to. So one of the key aspects of this is how do you reduce the carbon footprint, right? When I say zero carbon, it is zero emissions, zero carbon emissions. And when I say net zero, it is still that there would be some carbon emissions, but you are trying to balance that through some amount of green investments that you're doing. So which balances out the carbon emissions that you're doing. The greenhouse gases, how do you reduce them? Alternate fuels, that's been a big talk, especially in the media and in the press. You see a lot of recent announcements in terms of hydrogen production, green hydrogen, electrification that was being talked about for a long time, but now it's gaining a lot of momentum in some of these sectors like railways, etc. So a lot of talk and a lot of announcements happening in these areas. One of the specific topics around that is also the ESG. Now, again, ESG, if you look at the history of this, you do have predecessors to this, like the triple bottom line, right, which started off many years before. The concept of the triple bottom line, speaking about the profit, the planet, and the people. But if you see the implementation of some such concepts, it's not been that great. They have been great on paper, but in actual implementations, it's just boiled down to few KPIs that you tick off and say that fine, I also meet the triple bottom line requirements. But now increasingly, this is becoming more of a regulatory requirement, where the regulators are now trying to enforce on ESG frameworks of what is your commitment to the environment around you, what is the commitment to the society around you or the community around you, and what kind of a governance are you running within your organization. So this is gaining a lot of importance, and you also, some of you who are in the stock market would also know that some of the green stocks are gaining a lot of momentum and a lot of a soft corner from the investors due to the high importance and significance placed on ESG. So this is one concept, right, or one major driver, which is around the climate, the ESG, and these kind of topics. The second is digitalization. Now, digitalization has been there around for a very long time. But increasingly, we are seeing digitalization spanning or permeating various aspects of business, right from the customer engagement or the lead management or the order management, right from the sales, right? It's the entire C2C cycle. If you see the customer to customer cycle, there are so many of the areas where digitalization has permeated and being driven more by big data. A lot of this being driven by big data, saying that we have a lot of data, but we really don't know what to do with this data. Can this data be used in a more intelligent way that can help our business, that can help grow our business? And the need for higher efficiency. So where there is not big data is not necessarily the driver. The driver is the need for higher efficiencies, which is driving some of these digitalization actions. Now, when I say digitalization, I am not meaning digitization, which is just converting things into an Excel or converting things into an automated form, right? When I'm saying digitalization, I'm also talking about an intelligence that is built on an analysis or analytic layer that is built on top of the data that can then help the user or the customer decode or find something that is useful for the business. So many examples of this are there, and this is, as the year goes by, it is becoming more and more prominent in the industries. So that is another big trend. I would say this has been a trend for long, but it is becoming more and more important. Then the VUCA world. Okay, so VUCA it was a term that has been used all the time, but I believe the term VUCA itself got really tested during the COVID pandemic of what exactly is VUCA, right? We have been talking about this term, but in the COVID, even the people who speak about VUCA couldn't recognize this could be the impact of such a world, right? So, uh, and we saw a lot of the impacts of this in the last 2 years, like many companies going bust, many companies really going bankrupt and not being able to sustain their business, supply chains getting disrupted, a lot of talent getting laid off, a lot of people getting laid off. So a lot of these kind of repercussions that we could see of a very, very uncertain environment or a very uncertain external environment that resulted. So these uncertainties are now to stay probably, and we don't know when the next big uncertainty is going to hit. So it has become really VUCA that everybody has got a sense of what it really means. The fourth, I would say, trend is around the emerging startup or the entrepreneurial world. Now, this again, I would say over the last few years, if you see, this has really, really taken off in a big, big way. Especially for newer technologies. For traditional technologies or traditional areas, I think still you have the big organizations investing and running these. But some of the newer technologies, some of the newer kind of approaches or business models to the market, we are having a lot of these startups and entrepreneurs who have been mushrooming with some really good solutions, really good ideas. And this is a world that you cannot ignore anymore. This is a world that needs to be taken into consideration, and probably we have to work in tandem with this stakeholder, which is the emerging startup and the entrepreneurial world. So I'm not going to give too many trends. So these are the four big ones that I wanted to highlight to all of you, to say that these are some of the things that I believe are quite critical for us to take note of as we run our businesses and as we are in our industries today. Now, some of the key so what of this trend? So what are the repercussions or inferences or outcomes of these trends? The climate change, I think one of the key things is for us to relook at our businesses, relook at the products that we make. If need be, invest into newer technologies that can aid or that can help in driving these climate change, because the climate change, carbon footprint reduction, all this is increasingly becoming a requirement, a regulatory requirement, and slowly going into the customer requirement as well. So it is very critical for industries and organizations to invest in these areas and make it affordable for the customer to adopt these technologies. And of course, becoming a socially and environmentally responsible organization, this is not something new. This has always been there, but probably we need to take it more seriously in the coming years, because this is going to definitely play a big role. Because the moment you are unsustainable as an organization, you not only affect yourself, you affect an entire ecosystem that is there around you. Digitalization, the key outcomes of that is, yes, you have great solutions out there, but how are you going to leverage and use digitalization prudently? That is the key for success. So digitalization solutions, there is no dearth of it. There are people developing these, but how are you going to really use them? How are you going to really leverage them in a way that adds to your business, that helps your business, that you're able to take your business to the next level? I think that is the key. The VUCA world, as I said, has brought back the focus or more focus on resilience. I think resilience is a very, very important word to really test your organization, right? How resilient is your organization to external circumstances? In your MBA courses and stuff, you always keep learning about this scenario analysis or scenario planning. Many of the times we leave it at the B school, and then we don't get it into the day-to-day activities of the organization or the industry world. But things like the COVID have brought back that into picture to say that how strong were you when you were predicting some of these futuristic outcomes, or when you were predicting some of these scenarios. And even if these scenarios happened, how resilient as an organization are you? How strong are your processes? How strong are your systems that you can ride that wave, or you can pass through that phase without too much of an issue or too much of an impact? So that is what then really leads to sustainability. So if you have high resilience, then you will be sustainable as an organization through these worst times as well. And how strong is your risk and crisis management that you're dealing with in your organization? I think that has become more critical with, especially the COVID has brought that back into the discussion table. In addition to, earlier we always spoke about agility, we spoke about innovation, we spoke about focusing on the basics. But in addition to these terms or these concepts of resilience, sustainability, crisis management, all this has become all the more important, all the more critical. The entrepreneurial world, it is bringing back to the organizations the fact that they need a strong engagement beyond their organization. They have to connect with these stakeholders. They have to establish a linkage with these startup worlds. They have to recognize them and they have to invest in the right kind of ideas. So the startup world needs the support of the bigger organizations, and the bigger organizations also need the ideas and the really good the futuristic ideas from these startups, and they need to help each other to land in a mutually beneficial scenario. So these are some of the so whats or repercussions for industries because of these trends. Now, as talent, as all of you, the talent getting into some of these organizations, what does it mean for all of you? What do these trends mean for all of you? The first thing is you need to upskill yourself to help organizations with topics like carbon footprint reduction, GHG reduction, alternate fuels, climate change, because these are completely new topics. They have been there, but the organizations have not been too cognizant of these kind of topics. So they are suddenly seeming to be completely new areas. So we need people, or the organizations and industries need people who know this stuff well, who know what it actually means. What does it mean by when you say reducing carbon footprint? What is the best way, in which we can think about reducing the carbon footprint for our products and our businesses? What kind of new technologies do we need to develop or invest into? What is the viable roadmap? What is the it's very fashionable to say that by in the next 10 years we have to become zero footprint, but that is easier said than done. What is going to be the implementation roadmap? How are we realistically going to get from where we are today to that zero footprint or near zero footprint situation? So how do you create that viable roadmap? And developing an ESG outlook to things, where each and every process, each and every system, you look at it from the lens of, is this sustainable? Is it socially and environmentally, is it causing a havoc, or is it causing some kind of challenge, and how do I deal with that? Digitalization. I know that many of you are from that kind of a background, and probably you're also doing your specialization in this area. It's very critical for you as digitalization experts or IT experts to really know how to bridge the gap between what you're planning to offer to the customer and what is really making business sense for the customer. Because many times we see that you have great solutions, but the moment, you must always remember this, right? Like for an organization, an IT and these kind of functions are always costs. They're always investments, right? So the moment you're speaking about an investment, yes, you may not be able to see a return immediately, but what is it that is going to make business sense for the organization in the midterm or the long term must be made very clear, or there must be clarity around how is the organization really going to gain, or how is the business really going to gain by doing this kind of an investment. So that kind of clarity needs to be brought by IT and digital experts to the customers. Else the customers will always brush off these things, saying that these are fancy products and offerings, but we don't think we will really invest into these because we don't know how these are going to really impact our business. Also focusing on solutions rather than trying to sell your products. I have a product and now let me try to sell it to as many customers as possible. Change the mindset, change the lens to say that what is it that the customer really wants? What is really the problem that the customer is trying to solve for? And is my product going to address that problem or not? If not, then let me develop a solution for the customer. So the product approach is more of a standardized approach, which works if you have standard problems. But if you're having new problems, if you're having different problems, then you need to take the solution approach. And probably this is a combination of different products. The VUCA world, I think the talent really needs to get upskilled on risk management. They need to understand, what do you mean by risk management? What are the elements of risk management? What does it take to have business continuity? What does it take to keep your business afloat? What does it take to manage a crisis? So this is actually, during the pandemic, probably the leadership styles and leadership levels of various organizations were tested, because that is where the leadership comes to the fore to say that how does this leadership manage this crisis? So the talent needs to get really upskilled on how do you manage a crisis? What are the things you need to be aware of? What are the things you really need to take cognizance of when you're dealing with a crisis, when you're dealing with a challenge, when you're dealing with a VUCA situation in the external world? And how do I build resilience in my organization, right? How do I create systems? How do I create processes that are resilient to the extent possible for external problems or external challenges or external uncertainties? And the entrepreneurial world, I think you guys, you must definitely, if you have a great idea, you must think about investing yourself into that idea and making it happen. I think the entrepreneurial world is really going to be a very strong one in the years to come. And there is a lot of encouragement and boost that this sector will receive. So if you are an entrepreneur, if you are someone who has got a great idea, you must think about how are you going to invest into that idea and make it happen. So just having the idea is not enough. Convincing the other stakeholders of what is really your idea all about, and making the idea happen. When I say making the idea happen, translating the idea into action, I think that is very critical. How are you going to implement your idea? What kind of support are you going to ask for? Whom are you going to ask for? So that entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is more and more getting encouraged and it will get encouraged in the years to come. And if you are on the entrepreneurial side, these are the things you do. But if you are in the organization, if you are in a well-established organization, then you need to develop that capability to look around. You need to develop that capability to look beyond your organization and see what are these different engagements and these different collaborations that you can forge or you can establish for your organization and create a win-win situation for both the organization as well as for the startup world around you. So this is what I had to share with all of you, some of the key trends. What does it mean for the industries and what does it really mean for all of you? So I stop here. Probably I have taken nearly half the time probably. So I stop here and I would encourage you to now ask questions, or if you have anything that you wanted to discuss or know more about.
Guys, you can start raising your hands. Vineet.
Hi, Vineet.
Yes, hi sir. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask you that can you throw some more light on leverage on digitalization prudently? Because I come from a cement industry and I've seen people that are in rut of digitalization, everything, automating everything, although with no clear figures how much your efficiency would improve. And moreover, we have seen now managers accepting that hybrid and work from home also brings down the productivity with lots of distraction. So what's your take on view that digitalization is just a hype in the COVID era? And if at all it is required and is very essential, how do you formulate such digitalization strategy effectively?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Vineet. The COVID time has definitely accelerated the entire discussion around digitalization. Okay, at least organizations are discussing more on digitalization. Now, even then, okay, yes, you would have I think what you're saying about the hybrid working, I think many organizations, as you would have read, are speaking about it. And probably in years to come, that could become the norm. The way you're working, the normal way of working, the new norm itself could be the hybrid way of working. Now, within hybrid way of working, see, we need to understand certain things. What is digitalization and what is not digitalization, right? Giving an IT infrastructure to your employees so that they can work remotely and all those things doesn't necessarily qualify as the larger digitalization that we are talking about. That is creating the basic IT infrastructure that you need to work remotely and do things, right? Now, when you're coming into something like a manufacturing setup, for example, okay, now in a manufacturing setup, the whole fact that you need labor or you need people to produce certain things, to a situation where probably having such kind of a labor is going to become an expensive affair. It's going to become a difficult thing in years to come. Then when you speak about how do I now bring about automation in some of my processes, how do I build more intelligent systems so that I can manage with lesser labor? Yes, this is definitely an idea worth pondering on. And yes, it is going to be an investment. It is going to be a one-time investment, but you will have a business case in the longer term to say that fine, okay, now with the increase in labor cost, with the increasing availability of labor, probably this is a much better solution for me, for my organization to go ahead. When I say prudently, what I mean is not taking up digitalization for the fancy or the hype of digitalization, right? And it is very difficult to justify a business case, right? Because you can put so many things on paper, but the question is, after you do the investment, how many of the organizations actually track whether they were able to achieve the KPIs they started with, right? When you say efficiency, I will reduce by 50%. Efficiency is such an floating, ambiguous term. Unless you define efficiency well, especially if you're not in a manufacturing setup, if you are in more of services and other things, efficiency all becomes even more difficult to define. So unless you have defined all that really well, it's very difficult to justify the KPIs. So what happens? You do the investment and then it is forgotten. So God knows after 2 years, 3 years, whether you achieved the efficiency levels or not. So that is what I mean prudently, that you need to be always focused on what is the end result, because digitalization is only a means to attaining the end. It is not the end in itself. So that needs to be always kept in mind. And really, there is no problem in questioning why do we need digitalization for this particular activity? Can we do without it? And where you really believe such a thing can happen, yes, please go ahead and do it, but then track it and really deliver on the results, right? So that is something that we need to be mindful about as an organization. So that is what I mean when I say prudently investing into digitalization.
Great, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Request Bhavya to go ahead.
Hi, Bhavya.
Hi, thank you for your interesting and enlightening session. So I went through your profile and there's a lot of interesting publication which I saw, and there's one which I'm eager to learn a little about it, which is like From Money to God. That I found very interesting. So I wanted to know a little about it.
Okay, that is a bit of, I would say, a diversion to what we have been discussing for the last half an hour, probably. It was more about a perspective on things ranging from money to God. So these were few of us at IIM when we just got together, some like-minded people. And when I say like-minded people, not necessarily people who believe in the same things, but people who are open for debates and discussions and having an active argument. So few of us got together and we started, most of us who were well read, and at least we knew different things and we could bring different perspectives on the table. So we started discussing the relevance of some of these things that we keep hyping about or we keep hankering about, starting from money onwards, to say that what does it really mean when you're saying that you want to earn so much what is all this really driven by? Is it really driven by the need? Is it driven by, can you match your competition, or can you match your neighbor? So it ranged from topics to mundane to spiritual, right? An entire range of things that was getting discussed in that book. So probably, yeah. So that was the genesis of it, but some really interesting discussions and takeaways for me.
Thank you. Sounds really very interesting. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Priyanka has a question.
Hi,
Hello,
Priyanka.
sir. Hello, sir. Thank you for taking out your time. So I have a question. So over the past 2 years, we have been seeing, there's due to this pandemic situation, there's been a lot of restructuring of the strategy and the process in many organizations. So when it comes to Cummins India, what other steps you have taken? I'm sure that even it has seen a lot of changes within the organization. So in terms of resiliency, mostly, how did you deal with the scenario?
Yeah, so of course I can speak because I was there partly, even my previous organization during the COVID. I was with Siemens for some time, and then during the COVID is when I moved into Cummins. So see, resilience, what I've seen in these kind of organizations, and especially these organizations who have sustained themselves for a very long period of time. So these are not organizations that just mushroom in 4 or 5 years, and after 2 or 3 years they are sold to somebody else and they move away, right? These are organizations that have been there for decades, if not centuries. So these kind of organizations, one thing that they do very, very well is they have very strong systems and processes. When I say systems and processes, it may be that they don't have that much of agility in the market. Like it may not be that they are investing into some fundu technology, so many millions of dollars are suddenly invested in some great technology, or suddenly they go into a complete zone of a complete new entrepreneurial sort of setup. They may not do those kind of jazzy things very often, but they might have their own response time in the way they will react to the market, or they will take decisions. But what that has helped these organizations, because they have these processes and systems, it takes a bit of time for them to really assess the situation and come with an outcome. But what that helps these organizations in the long run is it helps them remain grounded on the basics. So they always get stuck, or they are rooted in the basic processes and systems. So if the process says you have to tick, or you have to go through 3 or 4 evaluation criteria, that is what it is. You cannot bypass it. So you try your level best, you will not be able to bypass it. And that is what has sustained these organizations through these difficult times, because they have played safe, or they have taken the right kind of bets during the time they have been in the industry, right? So those kind of organizations have really sustained themselves. I'll tell you a very simple thing. Those of you who are from the finance background might know this, or who are in that finance, right? You typically keep talking about profitability of an organization. Now, profitability is always, it is a accounting term. It is an accounting term. Okay, you can see profitability on your P&L account. But if you ask somebody to show where is this profitability, you show me in reality, where tangibly show me profitability or profit, it is not something that you can show tangibly. Why? Because what is tangible is your cash. What you have with you is your cash. That is what is tangible with you. Your profit, yes, because it is lying in the form of inventory somewhere, it is lying in the form of some receivable somewhere, it is lying in the form of payable somewhere, it is lying in the form of, so it is all lying in different forms, in some tangible and some intangible forms. Your cash is something that is needed for you to run the business. Now, a person who is deep into finance will understand that if I need to run my organization, I need cash to run the working capital. Without that, I am not going to be able to run this organization even for one day. Organizations that are stuck on the basics know these basic things about the business, right? They get stuck, they know these things well, and they run the organization that way. They don't necessarily run the organization on, okay, 50% profitability and, in few days I have no cash, I need to borrow, I need to do this, I need to do that. No, these things will not land up with such organizations. That is why when you have such a COVID situation and things, and when you have to close down factories, you have to close down offices for a few months, you still are able to sustain your organization and your employees because you have that cash balance with you. You are able to give salaries to your people. You're able to sustain them on some level at least. So I think focusing on these basics is very, very important. And to some extent, also trying to test your networks, your supply chain, having the right kind of backup, because any supply chain specialist or expert will say that, yeah, you have a supplier for a product, then you have a backup supplier for that product, and you'll have at least 1 or 2 backups for a particular supplier, so that you'll always keep balancing your supply or from these different suppliers. So those people who have religiously stuck to those principles, they have been able to skate through these things because they still have options that they can manage and balance to get raw materials, to get different products, and still try to run their factories to some decent level and maintain the required amount of inventories with them that can still be sold in the market. And you can, so what I'm talking about is all basics, right? In business, these all would be basic things that you would study actually in your textbooks. But the organizations that stick to that and implement them, I think they are the ones who have really been able to survive and build this resilience into their organization.
Okay, thank you, sir. Archita has a question for you. She is not well, so she cannot speak. So I will just read out her question.
Sure.
She says that we hear about digital twins and other such digital solutions for few industries. How often is it implemented, or rather, has it been practically implemented yet?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. At least I have seen that implemented both at Siemens as well as at Cummins, right? See, the digital twin, we must understand. Again, to come back to one of the earlier questions about the hype versus the reality. Digital twin is a very, very fancy concept. It's a great concept, right? That you're able to create a digital twin of a physical asset, and you're able to do various simulations on the digital twin. Now the question is, who really needs this? Where do you really need to implement this digital twin? Places or in products where testing on the live product is much cheaper, and you can do a lot of things with your live product, then why do you even need a digital twin to enter into that market? Places where it is impossible, because for example, in your oil and gas industries, in many of the process industries, and so some of you even mentioned about cement. Now, in many of these things, for example, you have boilers and other things. Now, these things, you cannot just trial run a boiler just because you want to test certain parameters of the boiler. Okay, because the moment you start the cement factory, then for starting the boiler, it needs certain amount of time. For shutting down the boiler, it needs certain amount of time, and it is not something that can just switch on and off. You have a lot of processes to take care of. So here it is impossible for you to just run some trial experiments on a boiler or on your cement clinker plant or whatever it is. So maybe a digital twin, if you want to simulate certain situations there, might make sense. Also, especially in your in the electrical industry, you have this concept of where you subject your equipments to extremely high voltages and high currents to literally see at what level does the equipment really break down. So for you to really test the insulation levels and resilience of that equipment, you subject them to really high pressures. Now this, what you call as a high voltage testing or type testing, what they call in the electrical industry. Now it's a costly affair, because you need to really make the product, and you have to get it, you have to develop the product only for testing. And you know that the moment it is tested, that product will be of no use again, because it has got completely destroyed. Because you're testing the product for situations where the product will get burst, right? So in such situations where there is huge cost involved and there is a lot of risk involved, probably it might make sense for you to use a digital twin and see how does this kind of a testing look like in this kind of a product. You can also look for some of this flashovers. You have in the electrical industry, you also speak about flashovers, and even in the Cummins sort of industry in terms of engines and stuff, there is a lot of personal safety involved. For personal safety, naturally, it doesn't, you will not try for trial experiments with live people, right? So these kind of areas for safety, you could definitely use a digital twin to say that if I am simulating this entire environment in a digital twin, how does this work? So there are areas for digital twins where I have seen the implementations are definitely there in the industry, and but they should be again wisely used. Where does it make sense to use a digital twin? Use it there. Don't just use a digital twin just because you like and it's a very fancy thing to use a digital twin.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have a question. I was going through an article a few days back, and I saw that like banking as a business more or less have been traditional, right? So however, recently we are seeing few trends in which banks are moving from the linear model, and then they are digitalizing also, and the products or the services that they are selling now, they are partnering with other vendors and all. So just wanted to understand like what kind of strategy to be like implemented, because banking, as we know, even now in India, most of it is follows the traditional model for this change to happen.
I think that's a very good question. Of course, I don't know how competent I am to answer that, but I'll answer to the extent I know of that entire sector, right?
Yeah.
See, banking is literally one of the critical backbones of the economy, right? Of every nation, and we have seen in the past that the moment that ecosystem collapses, the entire economy goes into a haywire situation. Okay, and we also have several examples of people taking advantage of the loopholes in the banking system, and that leading to a heavy downfall, heavy scams, a lot of scams where banks are involved, and there is still some loophole because of which the bank is not able to recognize and really bring out some of these issues. And all of this in a way contributes to a deterioration of the economy in general, because you are moving towards development and these things start pulling you down, because all the money that you need for some of these things are getting concentrated in various hands. My personal opinion on this is that something like what I mentioned about the sustainable organizations, right? They have their own processes and they have their own systems. I very strongly believe that the banking also needs to have systems and processes in place, right? I personally do not endorse too much of the banking moving into a high marketing game of trying to market their products, trying to move to digital and trying to start selling things like you would get things out of a shop, right? Trying to sell products and services left, right, and center. Because the banking is there here for a purpose. There is a purpose the bank serves in the entire society. That purpose should never be forgotten. And I'm happy that India is among the few nations where still you have a lot of regulations. You still have an RBI that very strongly controls, how these banks are functioning. The NPAs are constantly being monitored, and still some of the big banks land up in huge NPAs, right? Which you can't do anything about, right? You are landing up, you still have big banks lending huge amounts of money to, to individuals and to people, which never comes back. So you still end up in this situation despite such a such kind of systems being there, which just tells you that you need to strengthen that system and you need to have checks and balances definitely in place. As far as convenience is concerned, yes, I am definitely not against convenience, because for me it is very convenient, especially during these times, that you're able to sit at home and do your banking transactions, right? You have your net banking and this, so all of those transactions happening online is great, but it shouldn't, there still must be checks and balances in place. Otherwise you will land up in a situation where you would not know, because all of us are dealing with plastic money. All of us are dealing with digital money. Where is the real money at the end of the day? You know, what I spoke about in the organization in terms of the difference between a profitability and cash. This is the balance that banks maintain day in and day out, right? What is there in your accounts and what is the cash balance that they maintain and what. So this is a huge ecosystem that needs to continuously keep balancing your real cash with what all the transactions are going on. So that checks and balances, I believe, should always be there in a system. It shouldn't become too market savvy or too marketing savvy or too digital savvy that it goes all out like a marketing company to just sell products and services. That, I believe, is not necessarily what a bank should be doing.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else has any more questions?
So how is
I
the
guess-
background of the team out here? Like, how many of you are from, what kind of backgrounds, like IT, manufacturing, finance? So what is generally the split of the group?
So around mostly half of the batch is from IT background, but we have representations from manufacturing, operations, and all other, even some fields like the health industry. So we have representations from all domains.
Okay. And do people with these kind of backgrounds necessarily, do you have a specialization in that specific background only, or there are also people who have crossed from one to the other, probably crossed from an IT into something else or manufacturing into some other space? Are there such kind of people also, or they have been more or less maintaining their past experience?
So most of us are focusing on our previous backgrounds, like have been in the previous backgrounds for around a period of 5 and more than 5 years.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So I think we do not have any more questions. Okay, Piyush is there. Piyush wants to ask one question.
Hi, sir. Good evening.
Hi,
Thank you
Piyush.
for taking time for us. Before I was just going through comments and I was thinking earlier, a large part of your business has been, through engines, and over the next maybe 30, 40 years, that relevance of that core business is going to reduce, right? I see that there is a certain level of new initiatives in terms of hydrogen cell trucks and hydrogen cell based systems that are coming up. How long before do you think before these are commercially available? Because right now there seem to be pilots and they seem to be working well.
Yeah. So yes, as you said, at least our core business is on diesel engines, and so the diesel engine, the trajectory, it's very different across different economies or different countries globally. And for India, this is still to stay for some time. The reason being, for the commercial vehicle space, where we typically operate as Cummins, we don't have a viable alternate solution for diesel, because the key things that we look at when we look at for an engine for a commercial vehicle is that in the minimum weight that it occupies or it takes in the vehicle, it must give the maximum mileage, right? Or it should be able to drive the vehicle to the maximum distance and give the maximum power and with minimum emissions or subject to whatever emission norms that you have. So this till date there has been nothing that has come viably as a competition for diesel, or that has come close to telling or replacing a diesel engine. Now, having said that, one thing we must understand, and which probably many of the times in the narrative of diesel that gets lost, is that the diesel engine itself has undergone a lot of change over the years, right? Because of all these emission norms that are typically there in the market, the diesel engines themselves have become much, much sophisticated than they were many years before or decades before. So the emission norms are already extremely stringent that you have for these vehicles, that whatever emissions are still coming from a diesel are probably among the lowest emissions. And this, of course, can keep improving to some more degrees maybe. But yes, they are also much, much better off than what they were in the past. Now coming to the real alternatives to diesel. Yes, you have alternatives of, I think the immediate alternatives are something like natural gas and CNG, LNG. These are the immediate alternatives. But then for a country like India, we are still figuring out the infrastructure for such a thing, right? Because the moment you talk about commercial vehicles, the first thing that comes is availability of fuel. That needs to be there. Otherwise, it is not worth it, not worth taking up that fuel ahead. So, you need to build that kind of infrastructure in India for dispensing of your CNG or your natural gas stations. So that is one thing that we are still figuring out how that's going to happen. The next alternatives like hydrogen. So hydrogen right now is going to be more of a fuel as a feedstock. That is going to drive the industry, process industries like steel and oil and gas and cement and fertilizers. These are going to be the industries that are going to take bigger adoption to hydrogen to start with, because they are already using hydrogen. They are using a gray hydrogen today, or some other form of hydrogen, but now they will shift to green. So the using of hydrogen is something that is already happening with them. So it is just about shifting into a cleaner form of hydrogen. Mobility taking into hydrogen, like transportation and all, is still going to take time. Again, because of the same reasons. Like hydrogen is going to be available where? Who is going to dispense hydrogen? How are you going to distribute hydrogen in the country? And especially with the combustible nature of hydrogen, a lot of risk involved in really distributing hydrogen across the country. So all these are big questions which we still don't have clear answers to. So all this needs to be, and these are questions even which the developed economies are still trying to find answers to. So it's not just that in India we don't have it, even globally these solutions are being found for these. Now last comes your your batteries. Now that is far way ahead for commercial vehicles, because batteries for commercial vehicles are huge. Even if you were to implement them, they would be extremely bulky, extremely expensive, and again the charging infrastructure and so many things would become a huge question mark today. So that doesn't again have a viable solution there. So I believe that diesel is still here to stay for some time, as you can in the market, as you can see it, because there is no viable solution that's coming up immediate. But definitely efforts are going on, not just by Cummins, by many other players in the market and in general, right? Even the government is pushing a lot towards encouraging of usage of alternate fuels. But we need to wait and watch in terms of how this is really going to pan out. So all of the players are invested into the game, but we really don't know how things are going to pan out. So we need to keep evaluating this every year and see how things are going to really take shape.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
So,
you.
Before ending the session, I would like to take a time for a vote of thanks. So I would like to extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Mr. Chidambaran for sharing his valuable insights on strategy and digitalization. I'm sure the topics discussed today will help us in our future and in our career, and help us become better decision makers for tomorrow. Thank you so much for the wonderful session.
Thanks a lot, and all the best to all of you. And please do, if there are some questions after the session also, don't hesitate to just write to me. I can respond on mail.
Sure, sir. We'll send you the questions.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
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 Thank you, sir.